So
changes.
Can fiscal policy be feminist?
It can. It certainly can be feminist. I mean, every policy has important gender dimensions, and the reason is because economic problems are disproportionately felt by different groups. So, when we talk about fiscal policy, it's such a general term. We think in these very aggregate terms that if only government were to spend or cut taxes, somehow growth will bring shared prosperity. But that's not really the reality. Economic problems are concentrated, usually at the bottom of the income distribution. People with low incomes experience greater poverty, greater unemployment, greater precarious labor market conditions, and women and minorities disproportionately affected by these problems.
So you need policy solutions that also target specific groups differently, right?
Right, correct. So when we have an understanding of how women fare in the economy, then our policies will be better targeted to their specific problems. One way, for example, to look at the recovery is to see who has fared well. The unemployment rate is almost as low as it was prior to the Great Recession.
Which Democrats are claiming is a great victory.
Is a great victory, exactly. But concentrated poverty has doubled over the last 10 years, meaning that twice as many people live in neighborhoods of extreme poverty as compared to 10 years ago. That number hasn't changed since the peak of the crisis.
And obviously when people stop looking for work, they stop showing up in those unemployment numbers, right?
Exactly.
So talk a bit about how a feminist lens affects the bigger picture. So I'm hearing that we need policy that looks at the specific conditions of different groups, because it's not just one differentiated economy out there. But with respect to sort of economic theory, start perhaps with that question of markets. What difference does it make to have a gender-conscious approach?
Yeah. So when we talk about the market mechanism or how economies work, economists use this euphemism, the representative agent, and of course there is no such thing. And what we need to do is to bring specific analytic categories in our study, understanding of markets. And those will include race, they will include gender, they will include class. Without explicit articulation of those analytic categories, we can't theorize, number one. And then number two, we're not going to study the problems that are disproportionately experienced by low-income groups, people of color, and women. So the first thing at the level of theory and at policy is to acknowledge and recognize that these are important groups that need to be studied. Then from the perspective of how you design policy, they can be gender-aware policies. I mean, this has been recognized, I think, by at least some international groups who advocate gender-aware budgets, for example. Like, what would it mean to design a congressional budget or to design public policy that specifically targets women, children, unpaid care burdens, all of the problems that are normally borne by women.
But we don't do that here?
We don't have gender-aware budgeting in the United States. Countries like India do. But in the US, we don't have this kind of conversation. And it's very interesting because the United States, for example, is one of 3 countries in the world that doesn't have paid family leave. We are, with Papua New Guinea, I believe, and Lesotho, I believe those are the other 2, are the only country that doesn't have federally mandated family leave. What this means, of course, in the context of, we don't have public health care, we don't have all the other kind of social safety nets that we've come to know present in Europe. So we have a more, I would say, greater challenges. Families here in the United States are facing greater challenges in participating in the labor market, supporting their families, and responding to emergency situations like care for children or elderly, which are again disproportionately done by women.